I personally think the whole sort of war thing is just, it's silly. I think it's silly on their part.
I'm a champion!
Just saw Paul Heyman just coming from the breakfast buffet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of our talents.
He loves a
is,
buffet.
I think one of our talents is here.
Oh, here we are. We can bring him in live on the show.
Mr. Nick, let's give him a round
Mr.
of
Nick
applause.
Aldis. There he is. How are you, sir?
Yes.
Do you want to go there in the centre?
Morning.
Hey, thank you, everyone.
So this is your mic.
Great. How's
Well-
that?
Perfect. Welcome
All
to
right.
Gorilla Position.
Thank you.
How are you?
Very good. I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, God. Have you?
Well,
Good things, bad things?
Well, I'm trying to think about the first time that I became familiar with you. I think maybe you made some sort of comment about Isla Dawn. I think maybe you were sort of...
Okay.
Maybe
A positive comment?
positive to her, maybe
Yeah.
not so much toward me, but I don't know if I can recall exactly.
Oh,
But
really?
We don't have to dwell on...
Well, I think you are dwelling on this.
I thought it was a nice icebreaker just to...
Okay.
Just
No,
to let
I
you know
like that.
I never forget anything.
No. Well, that's good to know.
You, as an executive, you have to have a very sharp memory.
Yeah, you've got to be across
To
everything.
keep your enemies close.
However, I will say I'm genuinely intrigued because I cannot think what you're talking about.
You know, to be honest, and I don't mean to say this disparagingly, I could well have got you confused with somebody else.
Yeah, no, fair.
But, yeah.
Well, this has started brilliantly.
She threatened to put a curse on me. And then
Yeah.
a number of people, particularly media outlets, were endorsing this idea, and I found that to be quite disturbing.
Interesting. Was this recently?
No, it was around the Royal Rumble, because if you recall that she was not in the Royal Rumble, and then she tried to place a curse on me. It was a lesser known piece of news, I suppose.
Right.
But
Okay.
anyway, I for some reason I thought you were endorsing that course of action, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it was probably the inside the ropes, boys. It probably wasn't us.
You're gonna throw Kenny McIntosh.
Absolutely.
See, there's very cutthroat this
Oh yeah,
wrestling media
horrible
industry.
business, horrible community,
horrible
as we were
business.
just saying. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, great start. But firstly, how are you enjoying your time back on these shores?
Oh, well, it's very brief this time. I was actually back a couple of weeks ago for a wedding in my neck of the woods in Norfolk, so that was more of a sort of recharge that I was looking for. This one's very much in and out. So I mean, I've always thought that Scottish wrestling fans have always had a certain energy to them. So I knew this was going to be great, and tonight's going to be off the charts. I'm sure of it.
Do you get excited for these big events?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is, you know, in WWE, it is very fast paced, right? There is this sort of okay, great, on to the next type of mentality. But at the same time, I think at the moment, and I'm sure that this is sort of reflected in, well, it's definitely reflected in the business we're doing, but also just in the sentiment, I think, that we're seeing from the WWE fans everywhere around the world, is that there's this, we've really got sort of found our groove at the moment with building to these sort of big money matches and really having this sort of heightened anticipation when it gets to the PLEs, even though there are quite a lot, you know, and I know that just out of sort of happenstance, we've had quite a few close together, which is obviously not always ideal, but somehow we've still managed to maintain that, you know, unbelievable kind of build and anticipation to one or two of the key matchups on those things, and that really is just a testament to the roster. I mean, the talent, the depth of talent that you know WWE has at their disposal at this point in time is, I'd arguably say, is probably the best ever.
Absolutely, and I think WWE is doing well. I mean, it's not even an argument to say WWE is doing its best ever business. And we sent a tweet last night about the kickoff event before SmackDown yesterday. That was just a kickoff event, and the crowd for that was phenomenal. That must be such an exciting time for you to be part of this company.
For me, it's, you know, I'm obviously very blessed to have, you know, been fortunate with my timing on this occasion. You know, like I reached out to Hunter at the beginning of last year when I became a free agent, and just sort of made my intentions clear that I was looking to contribute. I think my exact words were, I want to contribute to WWE in any way I can, and I stood by that, and I stand by that now. And over the course of a few months, we had some conversations, and everything sort of fell into place, and then the GM opportunity came along, and I said, absolutely, great, let's do it.
So we definitely want to talk about your journey into WWE, Skills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the GM opportunity. Obviously, I feel like you're killing it in that role. You're absolutely
Thank you.
natural as a GM. But do you miss some in-ring action at the moment?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough to answer this just simply because I don't ever want to give the impression that I'm trying to sort of angle for something, right? Like I'm certainly not trying to sort of go into business for myself or anything like that. But you know, it's unavoidable. I've seen a ton of sentiment from fans saying, like, you know, we want to see you wrestle this guy, we want to see you versus that guy. I appreciate all that. That's not something that I have any control or influence over, right? Like it's very much a case of, like I said, when Paul and I first started speaking, I made it very clear that, like, I want to be part of the team. I want to contribute in whatever way you think is best. If at some point that way ends up being the best, then great. But my thought was, like, when the GM conversation was the shortest conversation in my career. It was Bruce called me and was like, general manager of SmackDown. I said, great, when do I start?
Yeah,
like,
perfect. Yeah.
You know, and they sort of laid out the, you know, the terms and the money and all that kind of thing, and I just went, great, all sounds great, like, let's do it. You know, like I just immediately I said to my wife, I'm going to be the best GM I can be. You know, I'm going to try to be the best GM of all time.
You're smashing
right? Like,
it, man.
and then you know, that's all you can do,
Yeah.
right? Like when I was presented with the opportunity to sort of be part of the NWA when no one was talking about it and it was a completely dead brand, right? I went, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to be the best NWA champion of all time, right? You're not going to be you're not going to surpass Flair or Harley or, you know, Dusty or anyone like that. But if you're not intending to be the very best, it's like you're not going to reach, you know, you're just not going to succeed on any level. So it's kind of like, you know, you shoot for the moon and maybe you hit the stars.
Well, you did some brilliant work down there, and you actually got me interested in that product. Like, it was deep. It was completely down to you and the work you were doing, and your promos were just fantastic. But to that point, and not questioning anything you're saying about, you know, contributing in any way you can, but you must know how brilliant you are as an in-ring talent when it comes to mic work and physicality.
Well, I mean,
so surely that's the end goal, basically.
Kind to say that. I've certainly never had any doubts in my verbal skills. I feel I've been sort of realistic about my in-ring work. I've always felt like I was a good storyteller. I'm certainly not.
Which is the most important thing, by the way.
I agree. I'm not a spectacular, you know, performer like an AJ Styles or, you know, or a Ricochet or someone. But it's, you know, I've always felt like I sort of found my niche, you know, and I sort of my thought was always to. I modeled myself after, funnily enough, and I've said this before, so I don't feel like it's sort of opportunistic brown nosing, but I modeled myself a lot after Triple H, because I looked at his work and sort of went, you know, I think very early on in my life when I really sort of honed in on the idea that I want to be in this business, not just be a fan, I wanted to actually do it. I sort of started studying him because I thought, well, you know, it's unlikely that a lanky British kid from Norfolk is going to be The Rock, right? Like this sort of, you know, you're not going to capture, you know, and not being American, you know, that's and I thought I'm most likely going to be suited to being a heel, right, being a villain. And so then I started looking and going, well, this guy really knows how to do that. And then I looked, and so then as a result of that, that's when I then went and sort of studied the people that he was influenced by, like Harley and Rick, and then I sort of studied like Nick Bockwinkel a lot and people like that. So it was, you know, so it all sort of ties together, you know, and I don't know how much of that he's even aware of, really, because it's not like we've, you know, talked at length about any of that. But that was my lane, you know, and I guess in the modern era. That lane is a little more, you know, there's not as much of a demand for that type of thing, but I think it can work, you know, in the right circumstances. And certainly looking at Cody's success is, is a great encouragement. And on a personal level, I think for me, I sort of take a bit of pride in the fact that I'd say that Cody's probably biggest moment outside of WWE was beating me.
Yeah.
Right? And so to sort of think, well, and here we both are, right?
Yeah.
Like sort of we put our heads together on that whole thing with All In, and we really bootstrapped that.
Yeah.
It was all our own ideas and our own intentions and our own sort of back and forth negotiations and ideas and stuff like that. And I thought we came up with something pretty special, and to see where we are now is gratifying.
What a time to be a wrestling fan that was, and everything that you guys did and then what followed gave WWE the kick up the arse it needed, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tend to agree. And look, it's tough at the top sometimes, right? Because if you it's easy to get complacent, I think, and I think that at least from what I've experienced so far in WWE, there's a real energy around trying to not get to that point again. There's very much this conversation about like, okay, can't rest on our laurels, like what's next?
That's the thing, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I think, people look at the business in such a microscope now compared to, I suppose, back in the day, right? Like, so it's very easy to become reactive. So then, look, I don't want to use this as a way to sort of take shots at anybody, but you see that in less experienced people in other places where it's very reactive to criticism, and it's sort of like, oh, something didn't go right. Oh, we have to hotshot something else, and you can't have that mentality.
Yeah.
I'd say one of Paul's greatest attributes, and there are many, is that he has patience. He very much believes in the sort of take your time. Like no one's gonna, like we don't need to rush anything. We don't need to, we don't need to give away the whole farm, right? Like it's one piece at a time, right? Like leave them wanting more. I'm very much of that mindset too.
I've got goosebumps you saying that. Like it's all about the slow burn.
Absolutely.
Next.
Actually,
Breaking our set here. Come on, please.
I was gonna
Bloody Mary at breakfast or what?
I was just going to ask, obviously, you've been around the place. You've been around for a very long time, the TNAs, NWAs, New Japan, and you've come into WWE at this time when you said, they're doing the best business they've ever done at this time. Can you give us some insight into what makes WWE like so much maybe bigger, more professional than these other places? And again, it's not like a slander thing, but it's just like, what is the difference between them and the top promotion in Japan that you worked for and all of these other places?
Well, and I'm glad you asked this actually, because it's something that it's a conversation I've had with a lot of my peers, quite a lot since I've come on, and it's just the scale, like the level of investment in their own business, has always been the marker of WWE success over everybody else. When you look at the expansion in the 80s, for example, everyone else was looking at how they could make profit and then enrich themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas WWE was reinvesting. Okay, more production value. Okay, how let's roll the dice on, let's get this celebrity, let's get this, let's book Madison Square Garden, let's do WrestleMania, right? It was this like this constant desire to grow. For me, the thing that blew me away, and I'm still acclimating to now, is just the sheer number of people that are involved in any broadcast at WWE. Like you go to work, and I had tremendous anxiety at first, like trying to remember people's names, because it's just so many people, and I'm not great with names. So it was sort of,
just call him Hunter.
Well, I know him. Yeah. He's all right. He's got like two different names. Yeah, and I switch back and forth between them, as you've seen. But the it's just so many people, and getting used to that idea of, to your point, when I was in other places, I sort of took it on myself to wear multiple hats and that's something that Cody and I talked about. It's that thing of, well, if there are areas that are lacking, people power, like we'll have to sort of pick up the slack and try to do that. In WWE, you have to do that. There's several times where if someone said to me, hey, there's a person for that, like just go and ask so and so, like they can do that, or like email this person, and you realize like that's the difference. It's the machine it's a huge number of people who are bona fide experts in their field, right? Like just with tons of practical experience and the qualifications and the standard. But they hold themselves to a high standard.
So we're talking about places, right?
Yeah.
Can I talk to you about one particular place that you spend a lot of your career in?
Sure.
Which is Total Non-Stop Action, TNA. They got a little working partnership with NXT. How do you feel about that? Are you excited about it?
I feel good about it. I don't know much about it, truthfully, right. So I can't really speak too much to it. But look, I thought Jordan Grace. I thought she really put in a tremendous performance last week, and I think that truthfully, she's probably a lot of the driving force behind the whole relationship, simply because once you have a talent like that, a promoter, which Hunter and Sean are at heart, they're looking at it like, I don't care how we have to get it done. I want that product on my TV show, right? And that's a lot of the time that's the sort of genesis of a lot of different working relationships. But I certainly hope that there can be more between TNA and WWE, because TNA has a rich history at this point.
Absolutely.
I was there. I came into TNA arguably at its peak, right, in 2009. It was, we were doing a couple million viewers on Spike TV. We were in 120 countries around the world. We had a world-class roster, which I think often gets overlooked. The quality of that roster at that time that I came into, that I was very, very fortunate to be around that murderer's row of talent to be, to learn from and just through osmosis. And so I think it would be beneficial for WWE to be able to harness some of that history, particularly when you look at like AJ Styles or Drew or LA Knight, and then even me, to a certain extent, like being able to sort of cover that significant part of a character's history. I think that what we're looking at now, and I think as we've moved into this sort of digital age, is that people want the full story. They want, they're not necessarily the idea of sort of everything you did before here doesn't exist anymore, right? Like I think that's sort of fading away because people are sort of going, why? Like it's more fun to know about all these other things and planting little seeds here and there, and people sort of going, I wonder what that's about, and then being able to, well, from WWE's point of view, I think, and this is just me speaking, I'm not speaking on behalf of the company, but I think the ability to be able to delve into some of that and utilize it to enhance your own stories, I think would be really beneficial. Absolutely. And I think could be a major shift in WWE going forward.
To that point, last night's promo on SmackDown between AJ and Cody was, we were saying on the show last week, this program needed that promo. Like it needed that kind of extra layer of meaty story. And we really got it last night. The crowd really reacted. We were so excited by it. It's made us more excited. It did everything it needed to do. They name-checked New Japan Pro Wrestling. They name-checked Ring of Honor.
Yep.
But they didn't name-check AEW. Is there a specific reason for that, do you think?
I don't know, and again, I can't. I'm certainly not involved in the conversation at that level, right? Of course. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's anything particularly nefarious. I think it's more of just a thing of, well, hey, look, they've made it very clear that they're sort of coming at WWE, right? On a number of occasions, fair. They've sort of, and I hate to sort of, I personally think the whole sort of war thing is just, it's silly. I think it's silly on their part, but I think that if you sort of liken it to geopolitics, for example, it's like if someone's declared war on you, right? Like you're sort of, it's not like you're going to just sort of throw their name around willy-nilly, right? And I think it's sort of like they've sort of been, hostile at times.
Yeah.
And I think that from the company's point of view, it's just kind of like, well, hey, we don't want to, poke the bear, right? Necessarily, it's not like a sort of, we're not looking for that. If it plays into, but at the same time, it's interesting to be able to acknowledge that, that part of Cody's history, for example. It's
really nice.
It's unavoidable with Cody because when Cody came back, he was the American Nightmare.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't the same guy.
Yeah.
And so to pretend that he just sort of, he's just sort of turned into this person, in the middle of nowhere makes no sense, right? Like it's so. I think in many ways they've been, that's the greatest, the greatest acknowledgement of AEW is Cody.
That's so true.
Being Cody.
Yep.
Right. Like and again, from my point of view, it's like when Cody and I wrestled, it was the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. It was he crafted that character and that persona and that presentation, and so the fact that it was also a major part of a major company being born and turning into a whole other place for people to go to work, like that's a tremendous accomplishment.
No, it's amazing,
and it does no harm to WWE whatsoever to acknowledge it.
And to your point of not name checking them and not being reactive to the pokes, I guess that goes back to what you were saying about Triple H and the way he is taking his time and not being too reactive.
If anybody has experience of being able to no-sell, online criticism and knowing how to let it wash over him, it would be Paul Levesque.
Yeah. Now, you are, to be clear, not a bad-looking gentleman. By any means. I was backstage at a show in the US recently, and you walked past me with your top off. And this is going. There is just a strange. I don't even know. No, there is a point. I think.
I hope we can get there.
Yeah, we've only got so much time. But you walked past, and I was like, Jesus, hench. Like, my point is, to get there, you are a perfect specimen when it comes to a pro wrestler. Right? You look like a perfect pro wrestler.
I'm not lie to you. I was saying to the cameraman, you look like James Bond.
Yeah,
I did say that.
But you have something about you when it comes to what pro wrestlers should look like, quote unquote.
Oh, be careful, you're straying into dangerous territory with should.
Yeah. Can't say that
should
anymore.
Word, yeah.
But to that point, I'm interested because this year is like 20 years of you being in the business, correct? Roughly? 2004, I thought you started.
I think 05.
Oh, okay.
04, 05, yeah.
So near 2 decades. And I'm just wondering why it took so long for you to get to WWE.
Well, it's a great question, and I don't have the answer, truthfully.
Was it something you were always pushing for?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, I did start very young. I was 17. Right, and so you take those first sort of few years and just throw them away, right? Because there's no you're not ready, right? You're not ready for WWE. I wasn't ready for TNA. I was very green. I wasn't ready then, right? But that's the blessing of TNA and Dixie Carter, who I will always credit for changing my life. Was that, and I don't mean this disparagingly to TNA, but just the fact that it was number 2, it just took a little bit of that pressure off, right? Like there wasn't that. Yeah. If I'd have failed spectacularly like Brutus Magnus did, right, in 2009 in WWE, like you'd have never heard from me again.
I was a Magnus fan. Don't go.
Well, that was like I somehow managed to sort of pull my way out of that quicksand and sort of make something of myself. But that first, I'm talking about like the Roman Gladiator helmet and the S&M gear and it was rotten. And had that happened on WWE, forget it.
Yeah.
Like you're forever. You're that guy, you know. And so I certainly didn't. I was not in a rush. To, you know, I knew even then I had the self-awareness to sort of go, well, I don't want to go there until I'm fully formed, because again, I'd studied the history of the business, and I believed that the best, if you look at the best periods of business for WWE, right, arguably the golden era of the 80s and then the Attitude Era, if you look at most of the guys on the roster at those points in time, except for a few prodigies, most of them were, you know, 10, 15 years in. They had been through territories, they had been in other places,
Yeah.
they had been multiple different gimmicks, they had found who they were, they had found their in-ring IQ, they had developed their own persona, they knew how to work, and they knew how to take anything that was given to them and be able to make it work.
Yeah.
That's the number one skill. Like, being a great talent and being able to put a highlight reel together if you're doing a bunch of high spots, that's not actually what we need. What you need is someone who can be given anything and go, cool, I can make that work.
Yeah.
Because if you can only do one thing, now you've come in and gone, well, this is the thing I can do. If you have a spot for that, great. But otherwise, like, I'm useless to you. Case in point, hey, the general manager. Cool, I can be the general manager. I'll be the best general manager you've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, because I have, and some of that isn't necessarily even ability. It's just experience, and I have a calm sort of self-assuredness that, hey, if I get 1 minute, I'll try to give you the best minute that, you know, you can. Just ask my wife.
Yeah. Excellent. But yeah, but to your point, when you were saying about in WWE, there is a person for every role.
Yes.
And that's something you're still getting used to. And in other places, you have a knowledge of so many other aspects of the business, and I guess that actually helps.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
And again, I think if you look at a number of the people really pulling the wagon at WWE now, you know, they are a lot of those guys. They are people who have that,
absolutely,
who have that ability to have taken a lot of different things, but have also taken on leadership roles in their own ways, and have sort of, you know, it's. I really believe that if you've had success somewhere else with limited resources, when you come here, it's just like you're just supercharged.
Yeah.
Like you're set free because you go, we've got virtually unlimited resources here, right? Like I've figured out how to do a lot of this stuff with one camera guy in a YouTube show, you know, or at TNA it was kind of like we had some people, but not not everyone we needed, or you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, AJ's a perfect example of that. Like his work is just so, you know, flawless and stellar. But people forget that, you know, he was handed all kinds of, you know, bizarre creative to deal with, you know, over the years and stuff like that. And again, he's, you know, I mean, I don't know if I think he's the greatest in-ring performer certainly of his generation, and I think he's in the conversation for all time. But for him to have reinvented himself the way he has, but still be the phenomenal AJ Styles, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, he's truly one of the greatest of all time.
He is. Next.
I think one of your great successes as the GM currently is that you are a very imposing figure. And typically GMs are, you know, they're a bit cowardly and they get bullied by the roster.
Yeah.
And I think even a lot of fans enjoyed your head-to-heads with Roman at times, and just like, wow, he's not backing down sort of thing. Is there like a level of instruction that they want you to be that guy, or is it like just, you know, go out and do it yourself? It
wasn't right from the start, but yeah, there was. I mean, there was you know, and I'm still fairly old school, so I still feel weird about sort of giving away too much about current things. But I will share that there was a conversation with Hunter where he sort of made it clear, like, I want you to use your physical presence. I want you to, how do I phrase this? You know, he goes, I don't want you to be like other GMs have been in the past. He said, all those things that typically, once upon a time they may have tried to hide. He's like, no, I want you to use those to your full advantage because it all just makes the character. And I fully endorsed that, obviously. And, the Roman interaction was a massive thing for me. Again, pulling back the curtain as much as I'm comfortable doing, I was tremendously grateful to him because obviously he's at that level where nothing happens without his go ahead, right? So to be able to sort of get that endorsement fairly quickly, and the same with Heyman, that my interactions with Paul to me have been absolutely invaluable, and getting to work with him, working on those things together. I mean, it's just like I'm getting paid to take a PhD.
Yeah. And
so I was just going to add that, and you don't have to agree or comment on this per se, but I think it's almost helping that character that you have now to make maybe a seamless transition back into the ring, if that is ever to come, because it would be hard if you were any other kind of GM, and then it's like we now need to take this guy seriously.
Yeah, look, and like I said, I try not to think too hard on that stuff because I'm not trying to go into business myself or angle for anything in particular. But from a business point of view, I simply look at it as may as well keep that option open.
Of course.
Right? Because, ultimately, at some point or other, the story may call for it, and, the best way to draw money is to be credible and taken seriously, and to, make people feel like, and look, create anticipation like I said, the fact that so many fans have continuously sort of made that comment, right, expressed that sentiment that, like, we want to see you in the ring, like, that means a tremendous amount to me, because at the end of the day, I'm the GM, and most of the time I maybe get 2-3 minutes on the show, and I'm very grateful for it. So to be able to achieve that sort of desire, in a short space of time, means a lot, and I guess it means that I'm doing something right.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, at this point in time, right now, probably not, because I tore my bicep and I had to have surgery, and it was I'm rehab. But I'm probably truthfully, if I were wrestling, and I was on the injured list, I'd probably have about a month left, before I was back to before I'd be cleared. But aside from that little snafu, no, I feel great. I'm 100%.
So if you could imagine a perfect scenario for a big in-ring run in WWE culminating in a big match, presumably at a WrestleMania, presumably in London, in Wembley, or something like
Sadiq.
that. Come on, Sadiq Khan.
Someone asked me yesterday, I think it was Davari. He goes, "Hey, is that mayor guy in London? Is he serious about WrestleMania?" I said, I don't know. I mean, how many politicians can you really take at their word? I said, but I mean, it seemed like a random thing to bring up.
Yeah, sure.
So I said, I can only take him at his word, but I suppose he is. And he said, I said, tell the truth. How many people right now in London would go, well, I'll vote for him for that, right? So I mean, it shows the power of WWE. The fact that he mentioned,
very true.
I want to bring WrestleMania, and the I don't know whether this is an endorsement of WWE or an indictment of our political leanings, but the fact that that could literally win in votes, is very powerful. But yeah, go ahead.
So say if that happens, London, Wembley, you are at the top of the card. Who is your dance partner? What's the dream scenario for you there? Because that must be something you've thought of.
I mean, yes, but not in a. How do I say this? Of course, it's something that I've imagined and thought of. It's not something that I think about in terms of it must happen. I'm like. Yeah. But if you're asking me, I suppose in a perfect world, Cody, Roman, Randy. I mean, all
of those three
AJ,
would be
right?
superb,
I mean, like the best the best guys.
Yeah.
Right. Like to me, it would be, a true honor, and like I would love that opportunity. I don't plan toward it. I don't angle for it. But if it called for it, I'd be willing and able to deliver.
Well, hopefully you kick off your in-ring action in WWE against Logan Paul. I can see that happening.
That's been one that's come up quite a bit. I think even Logan has expressed that sort of imagination a little bit. So I mean, but hey, man, that would be tremendous. Also, he's a tremendous talent and a really once in a lifetime success story. Yeah. So to be, and again being able to rub up against him in a lot of my GM stuff has been again very, very valuable to me, and I'm very grateful for it.
We've got to wrap up. I know it's a very busy day for everyone in WWE today with Clash tonight. Best night on the job and worst night on the job.
I don't know if I've had a worse night on the job, really.
Any awful matches? Anything embarrassing?
I thought you were talking about GM specifically.
No,
career-wise. Worst night? Oh, God.
Here we go. That opens it up a bit, doesn't it?
Oh, right, yeah. I'd say best night on the job, probably All In with Cody in Chicago.
Lovely.
Just simply because of the culmination of all, and being there with that sold out building, and then giving us a standing ovation before we even touched, and the fact that we didn't have a big creative team, we didn't have a multi-million-dollar machine, but $1 billion machine behind us. We didn't have endless PR and all this. I mean, we did all that with our own sort of imagination and bootstrap and elbow grease. So that it was tremendously validating. And then obviously we had a good match and did great business. God, worst. I mean, there's a lot. I remember having. I remember doing when I was Brutus Magnus, my first pay-per-view for TNA. I think I worked with Chris Sabin, and it was horrible. I just was so out of my depth. I completely shit the bed. I just was and the people were I could just feel the rejection, and I just remember thinking is this it? Am I finished?
Yeah.
But I think you need that sometimes.
Of course.
Because if you'd have looked on the internet at that point in time, I mean, you wouldn't have found a single person who would have said this guy, that's the guy. And the fact that I had to sort of absorb that and eat that, and go, well, the only way is up, right? And over the course of those years, sort of earned their respect, and sort of teaming with Doug, who was a tremendous help to me, and then teaming with Joe. And then getting my singles run, and all the way to being world champion, right? So it's sort of it was, you needed that to sort of, I did anyway. I needed that sort of propulsion. I needed that sort of self-awareness to understand, hey, you getting signed is not the end. And I see this a lot, and I do try to give this advice to some of the young guys I see come in, and some of the ones that come up from NXT, where I go, hey, don't be giving your Hall of Fame speech, right? You're at the starting line, not the finish line, because you see a lot of these guys and they come to the main roster and they, oh my God, I just want to thank everybody. Thank them for what? You ain't done nothing. This is this is the opportunity.
Yes, now it's come.
And it's no, this is the beginning, right? And I think for me, I have a unique perspective on that, because I'm sitting there going not everybody gets it, right? Some of us have to, make the best of what they got, right? And so don't be giving your Hall of Fame speech on your first night, this is where the real work begins. So I think, to have had, so even though that was a particularly rough night, it was a very valuable one.
Yeah. Well, without the lows, the highs mean nothing,
exactly.
Right? And I think that night maybe Isla Dawn put a curse on you.
It could be.
Just to bookend this. Nick Aldis, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nick Aldis,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
I'm a champion!